Footballers are often rebellious. They wear flashy clothes, they're rude to referees, and they express themselves on the pitch in a way that pushes the rulebook to the very edge. But one footballer wanted to alter how football worked forever. Meet Jean-Marc Bosman and the game-changing rule he created. See, in 1995, Bosman was fed up with one particular aspect of football, something that frustrated him so much, he even took UEFA to court for it. But he's not alone. There's been countless examples of footballers bending the rules on and off the pitch for the betterment of the game. From players who created new positions, to those who battled against adversity to pave the way for generations to come. We've highlighted the 7 that we believe are the most important, for a multitude of different reasons, with some of them having major impacts on the modern day's game, without their name even being mentioned. I want to begin with the players whose impact is more obvious in the modern game, before moving to players who you might not even know exist. So starting with arguably the most influential, impactful player of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo. And whether you believe he's the greatest or not is actually irrespective, the effects of his career will live on forever. If we look at the graph of some of the greatest goal scorers we've ever seen, it really puts it all into perspective. The likes of Drogba, R9, Henry all grace this elite group, with over 400 career goals each. But comfortably ahead of them is Ronaldo. Well, Ronaldo before his 30th birthday. But one striker who does beat young Ronaldo is old Ronaldo, with 491 goals scored after his 30th birthday. His combined total is 954, miles ahead of all these iconic strikers. He has them trumped twice, and he's not exactly slowing down either. If we look at his goals throughout the years for Portugal, he somehow seems to score more the older he gets. In fact, a recent Whoop study investigated what Ronaldo was really doing differently to be able to be such an elite athlete at his big age. He sleeps for around 7 hours and 15 minutes a day, has a strict diet, and a resting heart rate of just 44 beats per minute. And all this gives him a biological age of 28.9, 11 years younger than his actual age at the time. But the thing that really makes the man from Madeira stand out, especially towards the end of his career, is the impact he's had on other people. Footballers, coaches, fans. His influence on the game in terms of mentality is what makes him more than just a great footballer. His work ethic, discipline, obsession puts him in a category with Kobe Bryant. Someone that has given everything in their life to a sport, to the point where they've almost become synonymous with it. Growing up, I heard countless stories about how he worked harder than anyone else, and his self-belief was unbreakable. When Adebayor joined Real Madrid in 2011, he wanted to be the first to training, which started at 10:30, so he arrived at 9 AM to show his commitment, but somebody was already there. Ronaldo was in the pool swimming, and Adebayor found out later that he'd been there since 7:30. This kind of work in the shadows, in order to be the best, is such an inspiration to anyone trying to improve in anything in life, and these effects are felt for generations to come, even shaping how new players and coaches approach the game, with such a focus on hard work, training and recovery, as well as talent. Cristiano has undoubtedly changed how people look at football off the pitch, but one player revolutionised football on the pitch. This is a touch map of our next player. In the 2014 World Cup game between Germany and Algeria, you might be thinking, Boateng, Hummels, maybe Cruyff, but this was actually Germany's keeper, Manuel Neuer. And this heat map might look normal in 2025, but trust me, 11 years ago, Neuer was changing the way that goalkeepers played football. Back then, out-of-the-box play from a keeper was almost unheard of, but Joachim Löw wanted to play Neuer as a 5th defender. He was one of the first in his position to truly be comfortable with the ball at his feet, and the idea was for him to clean up loose balls and overhit passes to take some of the pressure off the centre-backs, and keep them more positionally structured. Löw had high praises for Neuer, saying that he was just as technical as midfielders in the squad, and under Pep at Bayern he had an insane pass completion rate of 88%. Without Neuer's bravery and talent, we wouldn't see the involvement keepers have in the modern day game. Goalkeepers have so much more freedom to sit higher and be involved in the play, and it credits Neuer as a true archetype of the game. Oh, and he wasn't a bad shot stopper either. Most clean sheets in Bundesliga history, most minutes per goal conceded, and highest clean sheet percentage. The fundamentals were already mastered, but the German took goalkeeping to a whole nother level. Neuer's still playing today, going under the radar with one of the most decorated careers of all time. And on top of his World Cup, Champions Leagues and Bundesligas, we have him to thank for the sweeper keeper role. But whilst it's one thing changing how a position is played, it's a whole nother thing to create one from scratch. And that's exactly what a 5'7" Frenchman did for Chelsea. After his move from Madrid to London in the summer of 2003, Claude Makelele was employed under Jose Mourinho as a deep-lying central midfielder. The original idea was to counter the traditional 4-4-2 formation by creating a triangle in midfield to outnumber the opposing two centre mids. But this little experiment actually led to a whole new position in football. Nowadays, it's one of the most important roles in a football team, but back then, Makelele was sacrificing any shot at personal glory, doing all the dirty work covering the back line and anchoring the team's midfield. He rarely got forward, scoring just 2 goals for Chelsea in his entire career, but the impact on the team was immense. Chelsea only conceded 15 goals all season, fewer than any team in Premier League history, and Makelele was named Player of the Season by Mourinho, and thus, the Makelele role was born. He ended up leaving Chelsea with a ridiculous 71% win rate, but his legacy lasted much longer than his stint in London. He stated himself, "I didn't do anything radically different, I'm simply a more complete footballer." But fast forward a few decades, and we've seen carbon copies of Makelele holding down the Chelsea midfield. Firstly Kante, now Caicedo, and they're both regarded as two of the best players in recent league history. Now, this role has become more vital than ever, and it's evident in fantasy football. CDMs have never been more valuable in fantasy, but with the new changes you have players like Rice, Enzo, Caicedo, Bruno Guimaraes, Xhaka and Paulinho all in and around the top 30 point scorers. It just shows how far the position has come, and the extra recognition has made people really realise how important they are. But even in his retirement, Makelele is still extremely humble, stating that people talk about the Makelele position, but I am old and it's time that everyone started calling it the Kante position. N'Golo deserves that. It just shows that the kind of person he was exactly the same on and off the pitch, completely selfless, someone willing to sacrifice any personal gain in order for the team to win. But while the birth of a new position takes years of adjustments and innovation, sometimes the footballing timeline can be changed in a singular moment. When Antonin Panenka stepped up to take the deciding penalty against Germany in the 1976 Euros final, I'm sure you know what happened. But on top of the Czech Republic making history by winning their first and only major competition, an iconic moment was born. The Panenka penalty technique, named after himself, is a crafty way to catch a keeper off guard with a chip down the middle in a high-pressure situation. It's been used in some of the most tense moments in footballing history, like when Zidane executed the perfect Panenka against Italy in the World Cup final, before getting sent off and losing, or when Pirlo humiliated Joe Hart and England in the Euros. Even a couple of years ago, Benzema scored a Panenka at the Etihad on his way to a legendary Champions League and Ballon d'Or season. Not only this, but Panenka's paved the way for a world of new skills and techniques being named after players. The Maguire spin, Ozil bounce, the Quaresma Trivela. The fact that lesser known players can etch their names in history with an expression of skill and flair is yet another thing that makes football so special. It's hard to imagine that any of these changes could have happened without courage. Ronaldo needed courage to back up his training on the pitch, Neuer needed courage to play with the ball at his feet, and Panenka undoubtedly needed it to opt for a chip penalty to decide the fate of the Euros. But there's one man who took courage to a new level, and with a single act of extraordinary bravery, changed football for generations to come. In front of 100,000 fans in 1978, Viv Anderson walked out on Wembley as the first black footballer to ever play for England. Being a non-white footballer in the 1970s, Anderson was subject to horrendous racial abuse during his career, and before some games, he wanted to pull out of playing due to the sheer hatred he'd face in the warm-ups. But he stood strong, and stepping onto Wembley as the first black player to ever do so has paved the way for generations to come. BBC editor Rashid Speed said, "Not only did he help open the door for other black players to be considered for England, but for myself and many other families of British Caribbean descent. He helped legitimise our place within a wider society." Anderson was a trailblazer for changing England's view on race, not just on the football pitch, but in day-to-day life in this country. And if it weren't for Anderson in 1978, we might not have the amazing multicultural Premier League that we do today, with players from all different countries and cultures. In fact, since the creation of the Premier League, the proportion of black, Asian and minority ethnic players has doubled from 1992 to 2018. In 2022, 43% of players were black, and looking at the English national team, 5 out of 11 of our starters in the recent Euros were non-white players. But even with all the legends named already, one player may have just changed the game more than anyone, and it's got nothing to do with how he played, who he was, or what he looked like. Jean-Marc Bosman was a Belgian attacking midfielder who scored a whopping 5 career goals, and never played in the top 5 league either. His journey as a footballer was underwhelming, at best. So what did he do? And why do we care? Well, in 1990, Bosman was 25 and coming to the end of his contract with Belgian side RFC Liège. He wanted to leave after receiving a better offer from the French side Dunkirk. However, back in 1990, players couldn't leave their club at the end of their contract without the club either agreeing to let them go for free or by receiving a transfer fee. And Liège demanded a fee, but Dunkirk refused to pay, resulting in Bosman missing out on his desired move. His contract ended and his new wages were cut by 75%. And what followed was a half-decade-long legal battle where Bosman and his lawyers fought tirelessly against the club, the Belgian FA and UEFA, claiming that players deserve freedom of movement at the end of their contracts. Bosman won the brutal legal case, and the result was that players whose contracts had run out could leave on a free transfer, with complete choice over where they went. In addition, it removed rulings on how many foreign players clubs could have in their squad, removing the cap of 3 for European games. You might be thinking, all this seems pretty standard, but only 35 years ago, player movement was incredibly restricted, especially for the lesser known lower quality players who were treated like pawns on a chessboard by the club. It's hard to imagine a Real Madrid team where the only 3 non-Spanish players were Bale, Benzema and Ronaldo. Bosman's ruling put the power back in the players' hands, which was crucial in a sport that was rapidly becoming all about business. The post-Bosman era saw movement around Europe explode, leading to some infamous free transfers, like Patrick Kluivert from Ajax to AC Milan, Steve McManaman from Liverpool to Madrid, and Sol Campbell from Tottenham to Arsenal. I'm sure some Spurs fans wish that Liège had let Bosman go in the first place. But thankfully for us, they didn't. And thanks to Bosman's frustration with his own situation, we can watch Mbappe tear it up for Real Madrid, rather than being miserable at PSG, for example. Bosman once stated in an interview, "I'm still waiting for others to say thank you. Ronaldo, Beckham, all of them. But we appreciate you, Bosman." However, I believe there's one final player whose impact on football is bigger than anyone else's. Well, maybe not bigger, but certainly more prevalent, which begs the question, who? And you might have had your suspicions, but in my opinion, it's Johan Cruyff. If we look back through the video, he ticks a lot of the boxes that have made our game changers special. World-class player like Ronaldo? Check. Created or reinvented a position like Neuer and Makelele? Check. Had a skill named after him like Panenka? Check. And don't get me wrong, he changed the game as a player. But for me, it was his managerial career, especially his time at Barcelona, that really changed the way that we play football today. In 1988, Cruyff took charge of a struggling Barcelona team, a team which lacked identity and a core club value. In 8 years, he took them from a crisis to 4 consecutive La Liga titles and 2 Champions Leagues. But as impressive as this was the gold standard at Barcelona, and even though he made huge improvements, other managers have done this with Barcelona before. But it's not about what Cruyff won, it's about how he won. Upon his arrival, the Dutchman had some very strong values about how he wanted his players to play. This regime had an immediate impact, as all but 10 of the inherited Barcelona squad were shipped out pretty quickly. Their replacements weren't exactly superstars either, with the likes of Michael Laudrup, Ronald Koeman and Pep Guardiola standing out the most. Other names in the squad you might recognise were Stoichkov, Valverde and Romario, but this Barca squad wasn't about famous Brazilian wingers and generational talent. In fact, we see a pattern with these players, that more are respected for their coaching than their playing careers, and to understand why Valverde and Pep, for example, went on to be such successful managers, we need to look back at what they learned under their managers themselves. Cruyff wanted his team to have high possession and aggressive pressing off the ball, tactics that are still incredibly effective today. He was adamant about supporting emergent talent from La Masia Academy, again, values that are still prominent at the moment, and he ensured that Barcelona as a club, from top to bottom in every age group, played football the exact same way. This helped players move seamlessly through the ranks, with players from the under-11s being competent with possession football all the way up into the first team. The whole club had the same ideology, which built an identity that still makes Barcelona the most romantic club in football. One player who benefited from this the most was Guardiola himself, handpicked by Cruyff out of the B team. Once in the first team, Pep said that he felt like a student in training, and every session was a tactical masterclass from Cruyff. Pep stated that Cruyff not only created desire and hunger, but helped him understand where the hunger came from, and how it could be channeled to make him better as a player. His vision for the game was like no one else's. Johan Cruyff painted the chapel, Guardiola said, and Barcelona coaches since merely restore and improve it. It's hard to understand exactly what Cruyff said or did in these sessions, but it's clearly had a profound effect on everyone who was present. It's that unbreakable influence he's had on the most influential footballing minds of our time, which makes me believe that he's had the biggest individual impact on this sport. He's like the master splinter of football, with his disciples shaping and evolving the game in his memory. Pep claims that his vision for football is 80% influenced by Cruyff, and that without him he wouldn't be a fraction of the manager he is today, and this is arguably the greatest manager of this generation. And without Pep, we have no Maresca, no Arteta, no Alonso, and these are also managers that are dominating in Europe themselves through the identity that Cruyff created. Luis Enrique, recent quadruple winner with PSG last season, said he will continue copying and improving his style of attacking football, and the sheer amount of trophies that have been won through his ideology is just insane. Just through the Premier League tree, there's been nearly 60 trophies as a result of Cruyff's teaching. This diagram showcases just how beautiful the influence of Cruyff really is. It's no coincidence that his two main clubs, Ajax and Barcelona, have two of the most productive academies in Europe, and there's a massive butterfly effect that's still unfolding today. Without Cruyff, Pep might not have managed at Barcelona, and helped create the attacking monster that is Messi. Without prioritising the academy, we wouldn't have seen Xavi and Iniesta dominate world football for the better part of a decade. Xavi then might not have managed Barca himself, and while he didn't have the most successful stint, what he did excel at was developing Pedri, Gavi and other La Masia stars. Without that, Barcelona might not even be where they are today, and who knows, Lamine Yamal might have not even made his senior debut yet. Even Pep trusting a keeper like Neuer at Bayern to contribute to keeping the ball can be traced back to Cruyff's possession tactics. No Cruyff, maybe no sweeper keeper. The bottom line of Johan Cruyff's ideology was that he wanted to entertain. Under his statue at the Camp Nou, it reads, "Go out and enjoy," which humanises football in the most humbling way. Cruyff also lives on through its foundation, with over 200,000 children benefiting worldwide, with 5 institutes, 3 academies and 4 colleges. Whilst it's not obvious at first glance, his impact on the game and who he was as a player and a manager undoubtedly makes him one of, if not the most influential footballing names of all time. I'd give absolutely anything to be at just one of those training sessions in the 90s, because something magical was happening.